The morning sun cast long shadows across the abandoned warehouse district as Marcus Chun adjusted his scope for the third time. His hands, steady as granite despite the cold, made microscopic adjustments to the rifle that had become an extension of his soul. 300 meters below, his target moved through the courtyard, unaware that death was calculating wind speed and bullet drop from a rooftop perch. Marcus had no name anymore, no rank, no official existence. The military records that once bore his identity had been burned, shredded, and digitally erased 5 years ago. To the world, Marcus Chun had died in a helicopter crash over Afghanistan. To the shadow organizations that now employed him, he was simply Operator 7. The number meant everything and nothing. 7 confirmed impossible kills. 7 missions where other snipers had failed. 7 times he had pulled triggers that changed the course of history from distances that defied human capability. Even Navy SEALs, the most elite warriors on Earth, spoke his designation in hushed tones, if they spoke it at all. Marcus pressed his eye to the scope and watched his target, an arms dealer named Viktor Kozlov, light a cigarette with shaking fingers. Kozlov had no idea that his death warrant had been signed 3 weeks ago in a classified briefing room where Marcus sat in shadows, listening to intelligence officers describe how this man's weapons were flowing to terrorist cells across 3 continents. The wind shifted slightly. Marcus felt it before his instruments registered it, a gift that had kept him alive through 43 confirmed kills. He adjusted his aim by a fraction of a degree, his breathing slowing to an almost meditative rhythm. In 6 seconds, Viktor Kozlov would take his last breath, and somewhere in Syria, a school full of children would unknowingly continue their lessons because the bombs meant for their building would never be built. But as Marcus's finger found the familiar curve of the trigger, his secure radio crackled to life with a voice he recognized, but hadn't heard in 2 years. Operator 7, abort mission. Repeat, abort mission immediately. The voice belonged to General Patricia Hammond, the only person alive who knew Marcus's real identity. She had been the one to recruit him into the Shadow program after his supposed death. She had been the one to promise him that his skills would protect innocent lives. And she had been the one to disappear from his life after their last mission went wrong in ways that still haunted his dreams. Marcus kept his scope trained on Kozlov, but didn't fire. Control, Operator 7. Need confirmation on a board order. Marcus. The use of his real name sent ice through his veins. Hammond never broke protocol. Ever. You need to get out of there. Now. Your position has been compromised. Through his scope, Marcus saw Kozlov suddenly look up toward his building. The arms dealer's face had gone pale, and he was backing toward a black SUV that Marcus hadn't seen arrive. In the distance, he could hear the distinctive whine of helicopters approaching fast. How long do I have? Marcus asked, already beginning to break down his rifle with practiced efficiency. 2 minutes, maybe less. Marcus, listen to me carefully. This wasn't supposed to happen. Someone leaked your position. Someone who knew about this mission before it started. Marcus's blood turned to ice water. Only 7 people in the world had known about this operation. 7 people with the highest security clearances, all of whom had been personally vetted by Hammond herself. If one of them had turned, then the entire Shadow program was compromised. Who? Marcus asked, slinging his rifle case across his back and moving toward the stairwell. I don't know yet. But, Marcus, there's something else. Your death 5 years ago, the helicopter crash. It wasn't an accident. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He had suspected, had wondered during sleepless nights why he had been the only survivor when the helicopter's wreckage showed signs of a missile strike. But Hammond had told him it was mechanical failure, had shown him reports that blamed pilot error and equipment malfunction. You lied to me. The words came out flat, emotionless, the way Marcus had trained himself to speak when fury threatened to overwhelm him. I protected you. There were people who wanted you dead 5 years ago, and they still do. The crash was meant to kill you, but when you survived, we had to make the world think you died anyway. It was the only way to keep you alive. Marcus reached the ground floor and could see armed figures moving through the warehouse across the street. They moved with military precision, and he could tell from their equipment that they weren't local law enforcement. These were professionals, the kind of people who would shoot first and burn the bodies after. "Why now?" Marcus asked, slipping out the back exit and into an alley that would take him to his escape route. "Why are they coming after me now?" "Because you're getting close to something they don't want you to find. This Kozlov hit, it wasn't random. He has information about who ordered your death 5 years ago. Information that could expose the entire conspiracy." Marcus felt the pieces clicking together in his mind like the components of his rifle. Kozlov hadn't just been selling weapons to terrorists. He had been selling them to someone specific, someone with the resources to fake a helicopter crash and the connections to bury a military investigation. "Where do I go?" Marcus asked, reaching his motorcycle, a black Kawasaki that could outrun anything short of a military helicopter. "There's a safe house in Baltimore, 1247 Elm Street. The basement has everything you'll need. But, Marcus, trust no one. Not even the people you think you know. The person who betrayed you today, there's someone close to the program. Someone close to me." The helicopter noise was getting louder, and Marcus could see searchlights beginning to sweep the area. He started the motorcycle and felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that had carried him through countless missions. But this time was different. This time, he wasn't hunting someone else. He was the hunted. "General," Marcus said as he prepared to cut the radio connection. "Why find out who did this, who killed my team 5 years ago? What are my orders?" The silence stretched for several seconds before Hammond's voice came back, harder now, filled with the steel that had made her one of the most feared intelligence officers in the military. "No weaknesses, operator 7. No matter who it is." Marcus smiled grimly as he gunned the engine and shot out of the alley. The hunt was on, but now he was hunting the hunters. And, unlike his previous targets, these people knew he was coming. As he raced through the industrial district with helicopters thundering overhead, Marcus thought about his team 5 years ago. Rodriguez, who had 2 kids and coached Little League Baseball. Kim, who sent half her paycheck to her elderly parents in Seoul. Jackson, who had been planning to propose to his girlfriend when they got back from Afghanistan. They had died because someone wanted Marcus dead, and for 5 years he had been killing for the same organization that had murdered his friends. The safe house in Baltimore was 3 hours away if he stuck to back roads and avoided the highways. 3 hours to plan, to think, to remember everything he knew about the Shadow program and the people who ran it. Hammond had said to trust no one, but Marcus had learned long ago that trust was a luxury snipers couldn't afford. He trusted his rifle, his training, and his ability to disappear into the world like a ghost. But as he rode through the night, one thought kept echoing in his mind. His team had died because someone had betrayed them. Tonight, someone had betrayed him. The question wasn't whether there was a traitor in the program. The question was how many traitors there were and how high the conspiracy reached. Marcus had spent 5 years believing he was fighting for justice, protecting innocent lives by eliminating threats that couldn't be stopped through legal channels. Now, he realized he might have been nothing more than a weapon pointed at targets chosen by the same people who had murdered his friends. The motorcycle's engine roared as he pushed it faster, racing toward Baltimore and toward answers that might cost him everything. Behind him, the helicopters were falling back, their pilots unwilling or unable to pursue a target who knew these roads better than they did. But Marcus knew this was just the beginning. Whoever wanted him dead 5 years ago still wanted him dead now, and they had resources that reached into the highest levels of military intelligence. As the lights of the industrial district faded in his rearview mirror, Marcus made himself a promise. He would find the truth about who killed his team. He would find the person who had betrayed him tonight, and he would make them pay with the same precision and finality that had made Operator 7 a legend among the deadliest warriors on Earth. The road ahead was dark and uncertain, but Marcus Chun rode toward it without fear. He had died once already, 5 years ago in an Afghan desert. Everything since then had been borrowed time and now it was time to collect on that debt. In the distance, storm clouds gathered on the horizon, promising rain before dawn. Marcus smiled grimly and pushed the motorcycle faster. He had always done his best work in the rain. The safe house in Baltimore looked like any other row house in the working-class neighborhood. Peeling paint, cracked sidewalks, and the kind of anonymity that came from being surrounded by people who minded their own business. Marcus parked his motorcycle 3 blocks away and walked the rest of the distance, his trained eyes cataloging every potential threat, every escape route, every position where an enemy sniper might set up shop. The key was where Hammond had said it would be, taped under the 3rd step of the front porch. Inside, the house smelled of dust and old furniture, but Marcus could see that it had been recently stocked with everything a man in a situation might need. Weapons, ammunition, surveillance equipment, and enough canned food to last a month. In the basement, he found something that made his blood run cold. Files. Hundreds of them, all bearing his real name and the names of his dead teammates. Photos of their missions, their families, their last moments alive. And at the bottom of one box, a video file labeled simply the truth. Marcus inserted the drive into a secure laptop and watched his world shatter completely. The video showed the interior of a helicopter, his helicopter from 5 years ago. But this wasn't the official investigation footage. This was from a camera that shouldn't have existed, recording from an angle that showed something the official reports had missed. Rodriguez wasn't in his assigned seat. He was leaning over Kim's shoulder, both of them staring at something on her tablet, their faces white with shock. The audio was distorted, but Marcus could make out fragments of their conversation. "Sir, you need to see this." Kim's voice, tight with fear. "The mission briefing, it doesn't match the intel we're getting from the ground." Rodriguez's voice came through clearer. "Should look at this. Someone's been feeding us false information. This whole operation is not what they told us it was." Marcus felt his hands clench into fists as he watched himself on the screen, leaning forward to look at Kim's tablet. He remembered this moment now, remembered the sinking feeling in his stomach as he realized they had been sent to kill someone who wasn't their real target, someone innocent. On the screen, his past self was reaching for the radio to contact command when the missile struck. The camera went dead, but Marcus didn't need to see more. His team hadn't died because someone wanted him dead. They had died because they had discovered something they weren't supposed to know. A sound from upstairs made Marcus freeze. Footsteps, careful and deliberate. Someone was in the house. Marcus drew his sidearm and moved silently toward the basement stairs. Through the thin walls, he could hear at least 2 people moving through the first floor, their movements coordinated and professional. They weren't here to rob the place or cause random violence. They were here for him. His phone buzzed with a text message. "Basement. Now. Come alone or Hammond dies. A friend." Marcus stared at the message, his mind racing through possibilities. Either this was a trap designed to capture him, or someone who knew about Hammond's involvement in the Shadow program had taken her hostage. Either way, going upstairs was suicide. But Marcus had never been one to choose the safe option. He climbed the stairs slowly, his weapon raised, but not immediately threatening. In the living room, he found Hammond sitting in a chair, her hands zip-tied behind her back. Standing behind her was a man Marcus recognized from classified briefings, Colonel David Reeves, Hammond's superior in the Shadow program. "Hello, Marcus," Reeves said, his voice carrying the casual tone of someone discussing the weather. "I'm sorry it had to come to this." "Let her go," Marcus said, keeping his weapon trained on Reeves. "Whatever problem you have, it's with me." Reeves laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. "Oh, Marcus, you still don't understand what you've stumbled into. This isn't about you. It never was. You were just a very useful tool, and now that tool has outlived its usefulness." Hammond's eyes met Marcus's, and he could see the apology there, the regret. "Marcus, I'm sorry. I thought I could protect you. I thought I could fix this without you getting hurt." "Touching," Reeves said, pressing the barrel of his pistol against Hammond's temple. "But Patricia always was too sentimental for this work. That's why she had to be removed from active duty." The pieces clicked together in Marcus's mind with horrible clarity. You're the one who ordered the helicopter strike. You killed my team. I gave the order, yes. But, Marcus, you have to understand, your team was about to expose an operation that took years to set up. We couldn't let personal feelings interfere with national security. National security? Marcus felt fury building in his chest like a physical force. Rodriguez had 2 kids. Kim was supporting her entire family. Jackson was going to get married. And their sacrifice allowed us to eliminate 17 terrorist cells across 4 countries. Sometimes good people have to die for the greater good. Surely you understand that better than anyone. Marcus saw the game now, saw how he had been manipulated from the beginning. The targets you've been sending me after. They weren't all terrorists, were they? Reeves smiled with genuine pride. Some were, but others were people who had gotten too close to discovering our operations. Journalists, investigators, the occasional politician who asked too many questions. You've been very efficient at cleaning up loose ends, Marcus. The weight of what he had done crashed down on Marcus like a physical blow. How many innocent people had he killed? How many times had he pulled the trigger thinking he was saving lives when he was actually silencing witnesses? Why? Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Why tell me this? Why not just kill me? Because I have one last job for you, Reeves said. There's a senator who's been asking questions about black budget operations. Questions that could expose everything we've built. I need you to eliminate him. And if I refuse? Reeves pressed the gun harder against Hammond's head. Then Patricia dies, and I activate every asset in our network to hunt you down. You'll never have another peaceful moment for the rest of your very short life. Marcus looked at Hammond, saw the acceptance in her eyes. She knew she was already dead, knew that Reeves couldn't afford to let either of them live. This was just theater, a final cruel game before the executions. Who is the senator? Marcus asked. James Morrison. He's been investigating military contractors, trying to trace money flows through classified programs. Tomorrow he's giving a speech at the University of Maryland. Perfect sight lines from the library roof. Marcus nodded slowly, as if he was considering the offer. And after I kill him, you'll let us both go? Of course, Reeves lied smoothly. You'll be reassigned to overseas operations. A fresh start. Marcus took a deep breath and made his decision. All right, I'll do it. The words had barely left his mouth when he moved. Years of training compressed into a fraction of a second as he dove left, his weapon coming up in a smooth arc. Reeves was fast, but Marcus had been expecting this moment since he walked into the room. 2 shots fired simultaneously. Marcus felt the bullet whistle past his ear as his own round took Reeves in the chest, spinning him around and sending him crashing into the wall. Hammond threw herself sideways in her chair, giving Marcus a clear shot at the second gunman, who came through the kitchen doorway. Marcus put 2 rounds center mass, watching the man crumple. But there would be more coming. There were always more. He cut Hammond's restraints with a knife from his belt and helped her to her feet. How many others know about this place? I don't know, Hammond said, rubbing circulation back in her wrists. David had his own network, his own resources. He could have told anyone. Marcus walked over to Reeves, who was still breathing, but wouldn't be for much longer. Blood was foaming at the corners of his mouth, and his eyes had the glassy look of a man seeing the other side. Who else is involved? Marcus demanded. Who else knows about the program? Reeves smiled, blood staining his teeth. You think this is just about us? Marcus, you beautiful fool. This goes all the way to the top. Pentagon, CIA, contractors worth billions. You've killed for people who wouldn't hesitate to burn this entire country down if it meant protecting their profits. Names, Marcus said, pressing his hand against Reeves's wound, making him gasp in pain. Senator Morrison was getting close to the truth. But he's just one man. Kill him, and they'll find someone else to ask questions. The system is bigger than any one person, Marcus. Bigger than you, bigger than me. Reeves coughed up more blood and fixed Marcus with a stare that was surprisingly clear for a dying man. You want to know the real joke? Patricia thought she was protecting you by bringing you into the program. But we've been planning this for years. Your team's deaths, your recruitment, every mission you've completed. It was all designed to turn you into the perfect weapon. What are you talking about? Your psychological profile, your skill set, your complete lack of family connections. We knew that if we pushed you hard enough, if we gave you the right motivation, you would become exactly what we needed. A killer with no conscience and no questions. Marcus felt Hammond's hand on his arm. Marcus, he's lying. He's trying to manipulate you even now. But Marcus could see the truth in Reeves's eyes, the satisfaction of a man who had played a long game and won. The targets we gave you, they were all carefully chosen. Each kill made you a little harder, a little more willing to take the next shot without questioning the orders. You're wrong, Marcus said, but even as he spoke the words, he could feel doubt creeping in. How many times had he hesitated before pulling the trigger in the early days? How many sleepless nights had he spent wondering if his targets deserved to die? And how had those doubts gradually faded until killing became as natural as breathing? Reeves's smile widened. Tomorrow, Senator Morrison dies. If not by your hand, then by someone else's. But the beauty of our system, Marcus, is that it doesn't matter who pulls the trigger. There's always another operator ready to take the shot. The light faded from Reeves's eyes, but his words echoed in the sudden silence. Marcus stood up slowly, his mind reeling from the implications. If Reeves was telling the truth, then every choice Marcus had made for the past 5 years had been an illusion. He hadn't been a guardian angel eliminating threats to innocent people. He had been a puppet dancing on strings held by people who saw him as nothing more than a convenient tool. Hammond was gathering files from around the room, stuffing them into a bag with practiced efficiency. We need to go, Marcus. If they found this place, they'll have backup coming. But Marcus stood frozen in the center of the room, staring down at Reeves's body. How many people had he killed for this man's organization? How many lives had he ended based on lies and manipulation? Marcus, Hammond's voice cut through his paralysis. We can deal with this later. Right now, we need to survive. Marcus nodded and began gathering his equipment. But as he prepared to leave the safe house, one thought burned bright in his mind. Tomorrow, Senator Morrison would give his speech at the University of Maryland. And regardless of what Reeves had said, regardless of the manipulation and lies, Marcus was going to be there. Not as Operator 7, the Shadow program's perfect weapon, but as Marcus Chun, a man who had finally decided to choose his own targets. The University of Maryland campus buzzed with activity as students hurried between classes under a gray autumn sky. Marcus watched from a coffee shop across from the library, his trained eyes scanning every rooftop, every window, every possible sniper position. Somewhere on this campus, another operator was setting up to kill Senator Morrison. Marcus intended to find them first. Hammond sat across from him, her laptop open to surveillance feeds she had hacked from campus security cameras. There, she said quietly, pointing to a figure on the library roof. Southeast corner. He's been in position for 20 minutes. Marcus studied the distant figure through his binoculars. Professional setup, good sight lines to the auditorium where Morrison would speak in 2 hours. The shooter was dressed as a maintenance worker, complete with a toolbox that undoubtedly contained a disassembled rifle. Do you recognize him? Marcus asked. Hammond enhanced the image on her screen, zooming in on the shooter's face. Operator 12. Real name, Thomas Wade. Former Marine sniper. Recruited into the program 6 months ago. Clean record, no family, perfect psychological profile for this kind of work. Marcus felt a chill of recognition. 6 months ago, he had been exactly like Wade, convinced he was serving his country by eliminating threats to national security. How many other operators were out there, believing the same lies that had consumed 5 years of Marcus's life? He's not the only one, Hammond said, switching to another camera feed. Security cameras picked up at least 3 other possibles. This is bigger than just one shooter. Marcus wasn't surprised. Reeves had been thorough in everything else. It made sense that he would have backup plans for the backup plans. They're not just here to kill Morrison. They're here to kill us. Which means we need to get to the senator before they do, Hammond said, closing the laptop. About a contact in Morrison security detail. We might be able to warn him, get him to cancel the speech. Marcus shook his head. He won't cancel. Men like Morrison don't run from threats. And even if he did, they'd just try again tomorrow or next week. The only way to stop this is to expose the entire operation. How do we do that? Marcus stood up, slinging his rifle case across his back. The same case that had carried death to 43 targets over 5 years. Today, it would carry something different. Justice. Morrison's speech is being broadcast live, right? National television coverage. Hammond nodded. C-SPAN, plus several news networks. Why? Because the best way to expose a conspiracy is to make it expose itself. We're going to let them try to kill Morrison, and then we're going to make sure everyone in America sees exactly who's pulling the trigger. The plan was insane, risky beyond measure, and completely dependent on split-second timing. But it was also the only way to end this without spending the rest of their lives running from shadows. Marcus made his way across campus, moving through crowds of students like a ghost. His destination was the clock tower, the tallest building on campus, and the one position that offered sightlines to every potential sniper nest. If he could get to the top, he could protect Morrison while simultaneously gathering evidence of the conspiracy. The tower was supposed to be locked, but locks had never been much of an obstacle for someone with Marcus's training. He picked the mechanism in less than 30 seconds and began climbing the narrow spiral staircase that led to the top. The view from the clock tower was spectacular, offering a 360-degree panorama of the entire campus. Marcus set up his rifle with practiced efficiency, using the tower's internal structure to create a stable shooting platform. Through his scope, he could see Wade still in position on the library roof, as well as 2 other figures who had taken up positions in dormitory windows. His earpiece crackled to life. "Marcus, this is Hammond. I've made contact with Morrison's security chief. They're not going to cancel the speech, but they're willing to wear armor and increase the security perimeter." "That won't be enough," Marcus replied, adjusting his scope to track a 4th figure who had just appeared on a roof across the quad. "They've got the whole campus covered. Professional crossfire positions, multiple escape routes. Whoever planned this knows what they're doing. The speech starts in 30 minutes. Are you ready?" Marcus chambered around and settled into the familiar rhythm of controlled breathing that had made him legendary among military snipers. "I'm ready." But as he waited for the operation to begin, Marcus found himself thinking about the man he was about to kill. Wade and the others weren't evil, just misguided. They believed they were serving their country, protecting innocent lives by eliminating a corrupt politician. They had no idea they were the ones being used by corrupt politicians. His secure phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Still time to walk away. Operator 7. Kill the senator, and this all ends. Refuse, and we'll make sure the world knows you're a terrorist." Marcus smiled grimly and typed back a single word, "Try." The response came immediately. "Look at the news." Marcus switched his radio to a local news station and felt his blood turn to ice. The anchorwoman's voice was grave, professional. "Federal authorities have identified the prime suspect in yesterday's terrorist attack in Baltimore as Marcus Chun, a former military sniper believed dead for the past 5 years. Chun is considered extremely dangerous and is thought to be planning additional attacks on government officials. They were framing him. Worse, they were probably framing him for Reeves's death and the destruction of the safe house. By the time this was over, he would be the most wanted man in America, hunted by every law enforcement agency in the country. "Marcus." Hammond's voice in his earpiece was tight with fear. "Are you seeing this?" "I see it. How long before every cop in Maryland is looking for me?" "Maybe an hour, if we're lucky. The FBI is already setting up roadblocks around the campus." Marcus watched through his scope as Senator Morrison's motorcade pulled up to the auditorium. 3 black SUVs, a dozen security agents, and a man who had no idea that powerful forces were trying to silence him permanently. Morrison stepped out of the lead vehicle, a tall man in his 60s with silver hair and the bearing of someone who had spent decades in public service. He paused to shake hands with university officials, completely unaware that 4 rifles were already trained on him from concealed positions around campus. "Marcus," Hammond's voice was urgent. "I'm picking up radio chatter. Federal agents are moving to surround the clock tower. They know where you are." Marcus wasn't surprised. The moment he had entered the tower, he had probably been spotted by surveillance cameras. The people behind this operation had resources that reached into every level of government. They could track him anywhere, anticipate his moves, and turn the entire law enforcement apparatus against him. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated how angry Marcus had become. Through his scope, Marcus watched Morrison enter the auditorium. The senator would be safe for the next few minutes, protected by concrete walls and his security detail. But the moment he stepped up to the podium to begin his speech, he would be exposed to sniper fire from multiple directions. Marcus keyed his radio. "Hammond, I need you to do something for me. Record everything that's about to happen. Video, audio, everything. When this is over, the world needs to see the truth." "Marcus, what are you planning?" "I'm going to give them exactly what they want. I'm going to become the terrorist they say I am." Marcus shifted his aim away from the sniper positions and toward the FBI agents who were surrounding the base of the clock tower. Through his scope, he could see them setting up a perimeter, preparing to storm the building. They were good, professional, but they were also following orders from people who were using them as unwitting accomplices to murder. The speech began right on schedule. Morrison's voice carried across the campus through loudspeakers as he began his prepared remarks about military accountability and government transparency. Marcus could see him through the auditorium windows, standing at a podium that put him in perfect position for a long-range shot. Wade moved first. Marcus saw the muzzle flash from the library roof and immediately shifted his aim. His own rifle spoke once, and Wade's body crumpled behind the rooftop air conditioning unit. 1 down, 3 to go. The second shooter fired from a dormitory window just as Marcus's bullet shattered the glass next to his head. The sniper dove for cover, his shot going wide and burying itself in the auditorium wall 3 feet from Morrison's head. Inside the building, chaos erupted as security agents rushed the senator off the stage. But Morrison was fighting them, trying to get back to the microphone to continue his speech even as bullets flew around him. Marcus swung his rifle toward the third position, a maintenance shed near the parking lot. The shooter there had a clear shot at the auditorium's rear exit, where Morrison's security team would try to evacuate him. Marcus put 2 rounds through the shed's thin walls, and the return fire stopped immediately. The fourth shooter was the most dangerous, positioned on a water tower with an elevated view of the entire campus. Marcus could see him adjusting his aim, trying to line up a shot on Morrison as the senator was hustled toward his vehicle. Marcus fired just as the sniper's rifle spoke. Both bullets found their targets. Marcus felt the impact high on his left shoulder, spinning him around and sending his rifle clattering across the clock tower floor. But through the pain, he saw the distant figure on the water tower fall backward, his weapon tumbling into space. "Target down." Marcus gasped into his radio as he struggled to reach his rifle with his one good arm. "Morrison's clear." "Marcus, you need to get out of there. The FBI is in the building." But Marcus knew he wasn't going anywhere. His shoulder was bleeding heavily, and he could hear boots on the stairs below. In minutes, federal agents would burst through the door and either arrest him or kill him. Either way, Operator 7's war was over. But as Marcus slumped against the clock tower wall, he realized something that made him smile despite the pain. Hammond had been recording everything. The attempted assassination, the multiple shooters, Marcus's intervention to save Morrison's life. When a video went public, when people saw what had really happened here, the Shadow program's narrative would crumble. The door burst open and armed agents flooded into the tower, their weapons trained on Marcus. He raised his good hand slowly, showing that he was no longer a threat. "Marcus Chun, you're under arrest for terrorism and conspiracy to commit murder," the lead agent shouted. Marcus looked up at the man and saw something in his eyes that gave him hope. Confusion. Doubt. The agent had expected to find a terrorist, but instead he found a wounded man who had just saved a senator's life. "Check the footage," Marcus said as they cuffed him. "Check the surveillance cameras. You'll see who the real terrorists are." As they carried him down the stairs, Marcus caught a glimpse of the campus through a window. Morrison was alive, surrounded by his security detail, but very much breathing. The senator was back at his vehicle's microphone, addressing the cameras that had captured the entire incident. "What happened here today proves everything I've been investigating," Morrison's voice echoed across the campus. "There are forces within our own government that will kill to protect their secrets. But those secrets end today." Marcus closed his eyes as the agents loaded him into a vehicle. He had accomplished what he set out to do. The truth was coming out, and the Shadow Program's reign of terror was ending. Whether he lived to see the final result didn't matter anymore. Operator 7 was dead. Marcus Chun was finally alive. The federal holding facility in Alexandria was a gray concrete fortress designed to make dangerous men disappear. Marcus had been there for 3 weeks, his left arm still in a sling from the sniper's bullet. His days filled with interrogations that went nowhere, and nights spent listening to the echoes of his own thoughts bouncing off steel walls. Agent Sarah Chun walked into the interview room carrying a thick file and a cup of coffee that smelled like it had been brewing since the Clinton administration. She wasn't related to Marcus despite the shared surname, a fact she had mentioned during their first meeting with a dry humor that suggested she had heard all the jokes before. "Good morning, Marcus," she said, settling into the chair across from him. "How's the shoulder?" "Still attached," Marcus replied, "which I'm told is more than can be said for the Shadow Program." Agent Chen opened her file and spread several photographs across the table. Marcus recognized them all. Reeves, dead in the Baltimore safe house. Wade, the sniper from the library roof. The other operators who had died at the university. Men he had killed to save a senator's life. And men who had died believing they were serving their country. 17 arrests so far, Chun said. 3 suicides. And enough evidence to put away a dozen more once we finish unraveling the financial networks. Your friend Hammond has been very helpful in identifying the key players. Marcus leaned forward despite the pain in his shoulder. Is she safe? Protective custody. New identity, new life, the works. She testified before a closed Senate committee last week. Her information led to the arrests of 2 Pentagon officials and a CIA deputy director. The news should have brought Marcus satisfaction, but all he felt was exhaustion. The Shadow Program was crumbling, the conspirators were being brought to justice, but the men and women who had died because of his actions were still dead. Rodriguez's children would still grow up without their father. Kim's parents would still wonder why their daughter never came home from Afghanistan. What about Morrison? Marcus asked. Chen smiled for the first time since entering the room. Senator Morrison is very much alive and very much motivated. His investigation has expanded into a full congressional inquiry. 3 defense contractors have lost their licenses, and there's talk of criminal charges for several executives. Turns out when people try to kill you for asking questions, it tends to make you ask more questions. She pulled out another photograph, this one showing Marcus himself in the clock tower, rifle trained not on Morrison, but on the snipers who were trying to kill him. This picture has been seen by about 50 million people in the last 3 weeks. Social media, news programs, congressional hearings. You're famous, Marcus. The man who saved a senator's life by becoming the terrorist they said he was. Marcus stared at the photograph, seeing himself as the world now saw him. Not Operator 7, the Shadow Program's perfect weapon, but Marcus Chun, the man who had chosen to protect instead of destroy. What happens now, he asked. That depends on you, Chun said, closing the file. Technically, you've committed enough federal crimes to put you away for several lifetimes. Murder, conspiracy, violation of national security laws. The list is impressive. But the people you killed were trying to assassinate a United States senator. The targets you eliminated over the past 5 years were chosen by a rogue intelligence operation that was essentially running a murder-for-hire business using government resources. and your testimony has been instrumental in exposing the largest military corruption scandal since Watergate. Chin stood up and walked to the small window that looked out over the facility's exercise yard. There are people in Washington who want to make you disappear permanently. Too many questions, too much public attention. But there are also people who think you deserve a medal for saving Morrison's life. Marcus laughed, a sound without humor. A medal for a man who spent 5 years killing people based on lies? I don't think so. Maybe not, Chin agreed. But the man who exposed those lies, who chose to protect life instead of taking it, who sacrificed everything to do what was right, that man might deserve a second chance. She returned to the table and placed a single sheet of paper in front of Marcus. Witness protection, new identity, clean background, enough money to start over somewhere quiet. All you have to do is disappear and stay disappeared. Marcus studied the document, seeing his potential future laid out in official bureaucratic language. A small house in Montana, a new name, a chance to live the rest of his life in peace. All he had to do was walk away from everything he had been, everything he had done, and pretend that Operator 7 had never existed. What about the other operators? Marcus asked. The ones who are still out there, still believing the lies? We're working on identifying them. Hammond's files contained a lot of information, but the shadow program was compartmentalized. There could be dozens more we haven't found yet. Marcus pushed the paper back across the table. Then, my work isn't finished. Chun raised an eyebrow. Marcus, you can't seriously be thinking about going back out there. You're wanted by half the law enforcement agencies in the country. Your face has been on every news program in America. You couldn't disappear if you tried. I'm not talking about disappearing, Marcus said. I'm talking about finishing what Morrison started. Finding the other operators, exposing the rest of the network, making sure this never happens again. And how exactly do you plan to do that from federal prison? Marcus smiled, and for the first time in weeks, it was genuine. Who says I'm going to prison? Chin stared at him for a long moment before sitting back down. What are you proposing? A deal. I help you find the remaining operators. I testify at every hearing, every trial, every congressional investigation. I become the face of what the shadow program really was, and I make sure everyone understands how it operated. In exchange for freedom, not witness protection, not a new identity. I want my real name back. I want to be Marcus Chun again, officially and permanently. And I want the resources to hunt down every last operator who's still out there believing the same lies I believed. Chun was quiet for several minutes, studying Marcus's face as if trying to read his intentions. You realize what you're asking for? You'd be the most famous whistleblower in American history. Every intelligence agency in the world would want to debrief you. Every terrorist organization would want you dead. You'd never have a normal life. I gave up normal 5 years ago when I supposedly died in a helicopter crash. The question is whether the government wants someone like me working with them or against them. Agent Chen gathered her files and stood to leave. I'll present your proposal to the appropriate people. But, Marcus, you need to understand something. The shadow program was just one tentacle of a much larger organism. Even if we cut it off, there are other programs, other operations, other people who think they have the right to decide who lives and who dies. Then, I guess I'll have to deal with them too, Marcus said. After Chin left, Marcus sat alone in the interview room, staring at his reflection in the two-way mirror. Somewhere behind that glass, people were making decisions about his fate, weighing the value of his knowledge against the liability of his existence. But Marcus wasn't worried about their decision. He had already made his own choice, and for the first time in 5 years, it was truly his choice to make. 3 days later, Agent Chun returned with a different set of papers. Not witness protection forms, but a consulting agreement with the Department of Justice. Marcus Chun, officially alive again, would work with federal investigators to identify and locate remaining shadow program assets. He would testify at congressional hearings and help draft new oversight legislation. And he would receive full immunity for his actions as Operator 7. There are conditions, Chun explained as Marcus signed the documents. You'll be under federal protection, but not in hiding. You'll have handlers, oversight, regular psychological evaluations. And if you ever use your skills against innocent people again, the deal is off and you spend the rest of your life in a cell. Marcus nodded as he finished signing. I understand. Do you? Marcus, you're about to become the most visible reformed assassin in American history. Every decision you make, every word you speak, every action you take will be scrutinized by millions of people. Are you ready for that? Marcus stood up and walked to the window, looking out at a world he was about to rejoin as a completely different person than the one who had entered this facility. No longer a ghost operating in shadows, but a man whose story would be told in history books. For 5 years, I killed people because someone told me it was necessary, Marcus said. For the rest of my life, I'm going to make sure no one else has to make that choice based on lies. 6 months later, Marcus stood before a Senate committee, his testimony being broadcast live to a nation still grappling with the revelations about the Shadow program. Behind him sat the families of his victims, both the innocent people he had killed and the operators who had died believing they were serving their country. My name is Marcus Chun, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the packed hearing room. For 5 years, the world believed I was dead. For 5 years, I believed I was a patriot. Today, I'm here to tell you how both of those things were lies and what we must do to make sure they never happen again. In the weeks that followed, 3 more Shadow Program operators surrendered voluntarily after seeing Marcus's testimony. 2 others were captured during raids based on intelligence he provided. The financial networks that had funded the program were dismantled, and new oversight laws were passed to prevent similar operations from being established. Marcus kept a small apartment in Washington, D.C., close enough to the Capitol that he could walk to the hearing rooms where he spent most of his days. The walls were bare except for 2 photographs. One showed his original team in Afghanistan, Rodriguez and Kim, and Jackson smiling at the camera in the moments before their final mission. The other showed Senator Morrison at the university podium, giving the speech that had nearly cost him his life. Every morning, Marcus looked at both pictures and reminded himself why he was doing this work. The dead deserve justice, but the living deserve protection. And somewhere out there, in the shadows that Marcus knew better than anyone, other operators were taking aim at other targets, believing the same lies that had once consumed his soul. Marcus Chun had been many things. A soldier, a sniper, a weapon, a coast. But as he prepared for another day of testimony, another step toward dismantling the machinery of sanctioned murder, he was finally something he had never been before. He was free.